Hi, this is Ned Siegfried from Siegfried and Jensen. As proud sponsors of BeliefCast, we hope you are inspired by Todd's weekly podcasts, which contain so many courageous stories of recovery and personal growth. Remember, it's not what happened in the past that matters, it's what happens in the future. We invite you all to work hard and be optimistic about your future. Enjoy today's podcast.
Weston and Kelly Clark, well, welcome to the show again. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you, Todd.
Seriously.
Thanks for having us.
I cannot wait for our followers and listeners to hear your amazing stories. And welcome to all of you for being here on the app and following me on the BeliefCast. We are where we are today because of you, so thanks for believing in me and supporting this great thing that we're doing here. We're sharing amazing stories of people who have been through things that you'd never would dream of. But it also proves to all of us that we can get through anything. And so today's going to be no different right now with Weston and Kelly Clark. They're married, but I met Weston actually when he was in rehab a few years ago. He didn't know Kelly at the time, and thankfully, because you two met each other, I got to meet Kelly, and both of your stories are phenomenal. I said this about Weston's story. It's one of the biggest comebacks I've ever seen in my life until I listened to Kelly's. And I was like, wow, well, I think she might have you beat just a little bit. But both your stories are phenomenal in the sense that I cannot believe what you guys have been through and how you're sitting here today so happy, so much light, but it wasn't always like that. And so, Kelly, you're a speaker, you have a podcast, you're an author, you do all these amazing things. We're going to start with you, and I'd love you to just share, kind of the dark times when you were younger and kind of the things that you were going through, and then what happened, that miracle that kind of changed the course of your life. Let's kind of start from there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, for me, it really started as a child. I was raised in a normal dysfunctional household, I'll say, right? I mean, there wasn't any extreme abuse or anything like that. I think we were just regular dysfunctional family. But about 7 years old, I really started to struggle with mental health issues. And back then, this was the 80s, and I think they just didn't really understand it as well as they do now. So they saw these kind of behavioral issues that were really panic attacks and anxiety and depression. And as a little girl, I just didn't have the coping skills to deal with that. And they didn't really know how to help me, even though my parents really tried.
Right.
And so that started, just as a little girl, that really started this momentum into a life of not being able to regulate emotions and making decisions, anything I could do to get myself out of the emotional pain that I was in.
Yeah.
So, and that, started with food addiction, honestly. As a child, I have parents that have struggled with food addiction. And so that really primed me, I think, for the drugs and alcohol that came at 13 and 14 years old. Once I put drugs and alcohol into my system, I had found an escape to the chaos that my mind was in. And it was truly like having my mind attacked by a negative influence all the time. It's like having that, we all have heard of that negative tape that runs, and I think everyone has that to some extent. Yeah. But mine felt just like it was constant, day and night, and really tortured me. And I just had this feeling that I was less than, unworthy, unlovable. Those are the words I can remember telling myself as a little girl. So
I think a lot of us can relate with that narrative. I think everyone on some level, like you said, goes through that. And then when you throw addiction on top of that, it magnifies it 1,000 times. And so, so you're going down this path now, you're struggling, and you're now been opened up to the drug world.
Right.
Which you went all in, and kind of talk about, what that led to and the things and the behaviors you started to do.
Sure.
And then how you had that miracle happen.
Well, it's so interesting when you open yourself up to these self-destructive things and you think that they're going to help, or there's a part of you that thinks it's going to help, but really what it does is it digs that hole deeper inside. but there's a part of you that doesn't care because there's a little bit of an escape in it. So you just kind of have this cycle going on, and that went on for years with me. And as those things added up, placing children for adoption, serious self-injury that landed me in mental hospitals and things like that, over the years, those types of sort of labels sort of stacked on my arm and really compounded the problem. And it went on for so long. It just felt, I think, to my family and to everyone around me that it was never going to end. And addiction is so, and mental health, it can be so progressive. And so in my late 30s, after years and years of struggling, it just sort of hit an explosion where I found heroin, and it went from really bad to like so much worse in losing the children I did raise, and then ending up on the streets, supporting my habit with prostitution, and getting caught into a world that even somebody who had a lifetime of drug use was not prepared for in any way, shape, or form. And that opened up a whole new level of darkness and struggle.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, again, I can't even imagine what that was like. And I'm sure you had these moments of like, I can't believe I'm in this position.
Yes.
Because I know you didn't seek that out. Like, okay, this is my plan.
Right.
But here you find yourself doing things you would never dream of doing.
Never.
How did you make it through that? How did you, I mean, I don't know, talk about that just for a minute. Like, how did you
navigate that? It is incredibly surreal. And I can remember being in it and just describing it like it's like being trapped in Wonderland, like Alice in Wonderland or something. You're trapped in this underworld, and it's the real world because it's what's going on in the world. But when you're living a life that isn't involved in those things, like you just see people going to work and all of that. But when you live in the underworld and you understand what people are doing on their lunch breaks, and you're seeing this entirely, the drug addicts, the drug dealers, the gang members, and all of that, that's happening. It is this weird reality. And I thought, how did I get here? And you know, you can't believe it yourself. Honestly, I couldn't believe it myself. But,
so you had a moment where things changed.
Yes.
And talk about that experience, because it's really profound. And I know when you first shared that with me, it really hit me.
Yes.
So talk about that with us.
Yeah, there were kind of a series of events, but just to things were really bad. But I had an experience, a spiritual experience, and I won't go into all the details of that. But it gave me sort of this spark of like, okay, I see all this dark stuff happening around me, but maybe there is light. And maybe if the dark spiritual stuff is true, maybe the good spiritual stuff is true. And it opened up my heart enough that I began to pray for the willingness to be willing, which is all I could do. I had no idea. In the condition I'm in, I'm an IV drug user. I mean, I am in that world. You're so far from a regular life, and people have given up on you. You know statistics, and it feels so hopeless. It's like being just down at the bottom of a pit. How do you get out when you can't? And so, but I began to kind of do that praying of the willingness to be willing sort of in my heart. And I do believe that God created the circumstances for me to be willing. And that meant I had to go through some harder things for a while. It had to go from bad to worse. And I found myself, really trapped in a group of individuals that were really evil and dangerous. But in that darkness and terrifying experience, I began to turn to God and began to kind of crave that light. It was like I knew I wasn't evil. I knew I wasn't evil, and that I didn't deserve what was happening to me.
Yeah.
But really, truly, there was a moment when I prayed on my knees, where I did an unconditional surrender in circumstances that I didn't know if I was going to live through or get out of. And I kind of gave up the fight of any circumstance. I just said, God, if you can help me, just know that my heart belongs to you. And I just surrender unconditionally. And I made the decision, even in these circumstances, to begin to show love to these people who, it's very sometimes dangerous to show kindness in certain circumstances, but I did it anyway. Yeah. It made me a target, but I did it anyway because it was the only thing I had control over. Was I going to love the people around me even? Yeah. And was I going to choose that? And I did. And God truly delivered me out of circumstances. And it was an amazing step to freedom. And my family was able to get involved and help me to really get away from these people. And I was able to, and that was the start of things for me when I saw that these incredibly challenging circumstances, that God would come in and help me when my heart surrendered. It just began to open up the miracles, the flowing of miracles into my life.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that part of your story. I know there's so much more to your story. We'll shift gears just a little bit here. I'm going to ask Weston, because now you two are married now, and you guys are two of the kindest, nicest people I've ever met in my life.
Oh, thank you.
And
Tom.
I think when people see you two and go, they can't even believe you've been through what you've been through, and now we're going to hear a little portion of your story. When I first heard your story, again, couldn't believe it either. So tell us kind of, the dark time and how you got out of that as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Todd. So I guess mine started when I was young, kind of like Kelly's. I dealt with, my dad was an alcoholic. And so dealing with that in the household, and, I just remember, as young as I can remember, my dad drank, and when my dad drank, he got mean. But there was also a kind side of my dad too. And I know when he wasn't drinking, there was a kind side. And I know when he went overboard, he always apologized to me. So it was that's what I was used to as a kid. And I think that comparison, as we lived in a really neat neighborhood, there was a lot of support and people, a lot of friends that I had, and they just had different lives. And so at a young age, it was like I was comparing myself. Why do they have? I want a family like that. Why does my dad have to drink? And so it's just that was that belief that I told myself that, I'm not good enough. That my circumstances are because of what I'm doing or how I'm acting as a kid. So I started to take responsibility for things that were going on in the house, and so. That catapulted me. I always told myself that I wouldn't be an alcoholic because of my dad, but I chose drugs. And, that was like, well, I'm not going to drink, but I can do drugs, and that was okay. And that was kind of like that belief that it was okay. And so, drugs kind of just numb me. And at a young age, I loved, I went to church. My dad, that was one of the things that I was grateful for, that, he took me to church. And, as a kid, it was kind of like, I forced. And it's like you're going to church, but I was grateful for that, and at least I was able to check out and get out of the house and to feel some peace in my life. But the drugs just, I just started to escape and started doing drugs. And, it started with marijuana. And then, I remember there was an incident with my dad, and we got in a really bad fight, and my dad punched me in the nose. And I remember there was just blood everywhere, and I was traumatized, and I took off. I said, you know what, I'm never coming home. And I left, and that was the start of it, and I moved out, and I started running with gangs, people that were involved in gangs, and I just started to rebel. I said, I'm gonna show him, I'm gonna do what I want. I don't have to live under his rules or his household anymore. And that kind of just got me into some dark places and some dark people, and that's when I started to experience methamphetamines, and it just, the party life. And I did that for years. And there was little times and periods that I'd kind of, blew through a settlement that I received from when my mom passed away. She passed away when I was 10. And, I just, partied it all away. And I just found myself, alone in a dark place. And, it's, when the money was gone, there was nobody there. I just was like alone. And, and so I just, I got married, I met my ex-wife, was married, 3 kids, and we both were in active addiction. And, we just used to fight and, in front of the kids and, and it just got worse and until we, split apart. And, my ex-wife left and I left and my kids were taken from me. And I just was like, well, there's nothing to fight for anymore. And, it just got dark. And, I probably spent 23 plus times in and out of jails. I became a thief, and I was just a thief, a liar. I just would rob from people because I couldn't keep a job long enough to afford my habit. And so I got into shoplifting, and I just, the more I think back and look at it, I was just hurt, and the drugs got to where, I would numb out and it helped temporarily, but then over time it just compounded, and
Right.
So there was a point where, I started to hit rock bottoms, and, I would go into jail, I'd get out of jail, on the streets, get back into the criminal activity. And I think for me, it was, that lifestyle. And that was what was hard for me to get out of because everybody was participating in everything. And, everybody would co-sign my stuff. And everybody was, everybody was sick. And I felt comfortable in that, I didn't want to get out of it. It's because I'm like, this is it. This is my life. And I remember, the point in the darkest of my time, I was living in this, I had, been strung out on heroin for like a year and a half. And, I was scared to go without it because I didn't want to be sick.
Yeah.
And I remember I was living in this camp trailer, and the conditions were just terrible. I mean, there wasn't heat. We had an electric heater to keep us warm. And I remember there was, rats that were infested inside the walls of this trailer. And I just I had my brother, bless his heart, he came over and to check on me, and he couldn't believe the environment that I was living in. And I didn't see it at the time, but when I look back, I think, dude, I can't believe I even went through that, or I even lived through it. But,
living with rats in this trailer thing that you were in, right?
Yeah.
Just living with rats, and you thought this is normal, or at least on some level.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And there was rats that had, dead, so it smelled like rotten animals. And, that was that darkness. And, there was a point that I knew that, the longer I started to use the heroin and the methamphetamine, I just got wore out, and, it's like, how much am I willing to take? But it took that for me to change, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, your stories, I think when people look at you, they can't believe what they're hearing right now. Mm-hmm. And again, it just shows that all of us can go through something really difficult. It doesn't matter where we come from, what we look like, what our upbringing may be. Mm-hmm. We all can get ourselves in these dark places if we don't have the proper guidance, or if we have a bad environment that we grow up in, and we don't have the support, that kind of thing. But when I first met you, Weston, was at Wasatch Recovery. And my first impression of you was like, this is the nicest dude I've ever met, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Kelly, I mean, you really are the nicest
He's so
dude.
nice.
And
Yes.
and it's not fake either. Meaning, at first I was like, is this dude for real? I mean, he's in rehab. Why is he smiling?
Yeah.
You know, and you had so much compassion and love, but again, your heart's so big that you feel so much hurt though at the same time. And again, listening to your story and what you've been up to, and I feel that way about you too, Kelly. But then, you know, what's amazing is you two found each other, which is even more incredible.
I know.
And I know that's a big, long story, but what I'd like to talk about is how do you guys do this? To not only individually, but together. How do you guys manage, you know, your own recovery, staying connected to God and your faith? And because I think people are going, how do these two do it? How do they do it? And again, you guys blow me away on how you carry yourselves. It really is amazing.
Thank you.
So how do you guys do this?
Well,
Awesome.
I can tell you, like, this is the amazing part. You know, this is the joyful part. We finally figured out how to find joy. And it's not that things are perfect, because we are both recovering addicts. So this is hard stuff. And we lived in hard stuff for a long time. But, you know, I think because we both work our own individual recovery plan and we allow that for each other. He gets to do his recovery, I do mine. That's awesome. And I let him take care of his. So that's his thing, and I take care of mine. And, you know, we put God and our recovery first, even before each other, because we have to. And when the priorities are correct, everything else seems to work out. Plus, you know, he really is this sweet and nice all the time. So it's pretty easy to live with, and we just have a lot of fun. But awesome. We really enjoy it. We try to really enjoy it. It's just we're finally in the good part, I guess. That's how it feels. We made it through all that, and it's so amazing because, you know, we came out of it, and I think Weston feels the same way. Like, you come out of all that life, and then you're like, who would I date? You know, like, how do you even begin to go on a date? Like, when do you tell them about the prostitution? Is that the second date or the third date, right? When do you tell somebody something like that? And hide your past. You know, it is what it is, and it's part of my story, and I share it so openly. And so the fact that we found each other and that our pasts get to be such an asset for our relationship. He knows what it was like for women out there doing what I did. I mean, he gets it. And I know what it was like for him, and we get that. And so the fact that that's an asset in our relationship is pretty incredible. Yeah. I can't even imagine how nervous you would have been to bring that up. Right. About prostitution and everything. You're like, how do I even bring this up? It's like, here's the book. Just read that. Get back to me if you're interested. But
the beautiful thing about that, you guys, is the vulnerability piece. Like, how important vulnerability is in your recovery, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's why we're asked to share all the time.
Yes.
Because sharing makes us stronger. We're giving stuff away. We're helping people while we share, and we get it back tenfold, right?
Yes.
That's why we're doing this today, folks. At the end of the day.
And he has the same drive that I do, and I noticed this about him immediately, to share his experience, strength, and hope with others. And that has been my purpose as well too. I mean, like, I came out of all of that knowing I am going to share my story. I have to share it because it's you know, it is incredible what God can do when we allow God in. And so for him to have that same purpose, I mean, we just have the same. So we get to come together and live that purpose together. Yeah, you have the same goals, same insights, things like that. Yeah. Oh, I love that, honey. Thank you for sharing. She's so awesome. But, you know, I it's so fun to, you know, like you were saying, like, we can relate to each other on so many levels. And we serve as missionaries in the Church of Jesus Christ ARP, Addiction Recovery Program. And so we get to go and, you know, use our you know, our weaknesses and our struggles, and we get to testify of Jesus Christ, and we get to help other people. And, you know, I go into those meetings with her, and she opens up, and I just am so grateful that I get to be married to somebody like this. And, you know, I was reading this quote, and it says, you know, the miracles lie on the other side of the storms. And so sometimes you have to go through the storms of life to find the miracle, and she's the miracle, you know. And
we get to share our testimonies and we get to help others. And it's, what's fun is like, I'm an addict. And so, I'm still, I'm still going through, over 23 years of addiction. I'm still, my brain's healing, and it's so nice to be able to sit and talk with her. And if I'm struggling with something that she understands, and, it's nice. And then if she's struggling, that I can understand, and we can walk each other through it, and there's no judgment.
Yeah.
And that's what's nice is, I'm like, well, this is what I'm struggling with today. Cause we're human and we struggle. There's days that, I'm like, but we just lift each other up, and, that's what I love about her.
You guys are awesome. I share this a lot. You've heard me say this a ton to clients, is life happens for us. I really hit on that all the time. And I was thinking about you in your story, and you're living in your car, and you're in the back of a dollar store somewhere, just at the end of your rope, and just living in a parking lot, living with would you ever have dreamed that this would have happened? Think about that all those experiences, as bad as they were, led to this. And same with you.
Yes.
In those hotel rooms with some dangerous people.
Yep.
Would you ever have dreamed that this would have come of that?
I don't know that anyone around us would have thought that.
No, and that's
the exciting part.
And I'm reminded all the time that life happens for us. Yeah. I want to stress that, because look what you guys are doing now. Yeah. See, people listen to you too because of what you've been through. Had you not been through any of that, they might listen to you, but they're like, what is this? What do these two know? But when they hear your story, they know a lot. Yeah. I want to listen to them because I'm struggling. It may not be the same thing, but these guys know what that's like.
That's right.
Oh, I love that, Todd.
Yeah.
That's such a good, I think about that. Sorry, honey, go ahead.
No, you first.
Well, and so I think I'm reading a book. One of my favorites is Neil A. Maxwell, and I just love it. He has a book, and it's called These Things Give the Experience, I think. So I don't know if that's it, but close maybe. But
all these things give the experience, or something like that.
But it's just, life is an experience, and sometimes we go through hard things, like you were saying, for a reason, and it's a learning experience. Like, I've had opportunities, like in the past, just in the last year or two, of like going into hard situations, like my dad just passed away from alcohol. Right. And, I just thought like that, to be able to push through that anxiety and fear to, go and set things aside of the past, and to be able to lay, next to my dad and just, love him and laugh with him. And that's what life's about, and we can do hard things, we can do hard things.
Yes.
And I believe you when you say that now.
Yeah.
Because of what you've been through.
Yeah.
Yes. But I also believe that sometimes the hard things, even when we're in them and we think, how could this ever be for my good?
Right.
Those are our vehicles to the light. Those hard things are our vehicles to God, to our own understanding of God, to our relationship with God. And without them, I would just go do my own thing. I wouldn't have ever needed to turn to anyone other than myself, if I could just rely, So there was something so amazing about the hard being as hard as it was, because then the light gets to be that good too. Yeah.
Wow. Very well said. Yeah. I want to ask each one of you, like what gets you going? Like, what ignites you? What gets you out of bed in the morning? What is it? I mean, you guys have such good energy about you. What is it? And I know your faith plays a big part in all that you do, and you guys aren't afraid to talk about it. And I love that about you too as well. But what gets you out of bed in the morning? What is it? So let's start with you, Weston. Put you on the spot.
Yeah, let's hear what you're going to say.
He's like, I was going to steal Kelly's, but now you're going to.
Oh, that's a great question, Todd. Because for me, like, it's every day. And like I was saying earlier, some days are a struggle. And, dealing with depression and anxiety in the past, and I still deal with it in levels today. It's purpose. Like, I get out of bed and thinking of somebody else, like, it's what helps me get out of bed. It's it's not about me anymore. And when I make it about somebody, getting up out of bed, going to work, reaching out. I mean, I do outreach calls. People call me that are struggling, and just to be able to know that, and to, that gives me light. When somebody is calling and reaching out to me, that I can better someone's life, maybe share some light, hope with somebody. That's what gets me up every morning, because there's part of me, do I want to, sometimes depression, you want to lay in bed, you just want to lay there. Some days it's like, do I want to get up? And then it's like, I push through it, and it's like, isn't that like,
yes.
It's like and just thinking of somebody else, whose day can I make today?
Wow.
Who can I reach out to? Because there's plenty of people struggling in this world. When I make it about somebody else, it just motivates me,
Love it.
Yeah.
Beautifully said. Kelly, how about you?
I just think about the past and how much fear and anxiety I used to live in. And now I feel just a general feeling of excitement for my life. And so I guess what gets me up is I'm excited. I get to grow today where I never used to be able to grow. I was stuck at like this perpetual 13 years old and dark and moody. It's like I hit my emo phase and I stayed there for 30 years, right? But I get to grow now. So, like now I'm in school. I get to serve with Weston. I get to have this fun relationship with him, rebuild relationships with family. So I think just the general excitement for life, but underneath all of that is the greater purpose.
Yeah.
And the greater purpose is giving this back to others and sharing our testimonies.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. As you guys were talking, we've had, there was a couple of mutual friends in recovery that drove down to be a part of your addiction recovery group. You know who I'm talking about, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So, and I met with one of them, in my outside practice, and they were telling me how impactful that was for them and that they needed that. So I just want you to know, like, that's what you guys are doing. You're sharing your light and making a difference in people's lives. It just blows my mind. I do want to share this too, because what you basically are saying is this. I heard this from a former client, and I put it to memory because I didn't want to ever forget it. And here's what he said. He said, I tried to find myself I could not see. I tried to find my God eluded me. I tried to find my brother and sister. I found all three. And I thought, there it is. You guys are getting up with a purpose. And you want to make a difference in people's lives. And so anyone listening to this, I really believe in giving it away. We give to get. And it's hard to do that when we're struggling. But like when you said, I'm just going to be kind to these dangerous people right now.
Yep.
I was just like, wow. I mean, that's you giving it away. And I just think when we do that, it really does get us out of bed. I mean, I try to think the same thing. Like, who can I make a difference in today that'll get me out of bed? Because I want to sleep all day or whatever. So, man, I love what you guys said.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Todd.
Yeah.
Well, we're grateful. I mean, it's, like I don't know. Life, if there was something I could tell somebody, that there is a light in everybody. Everybody has a light. And sometimes it's hard to see that light in ourselves.
Yeah.
Like whether it's depression or anxiety or fear, it's hard, but to have a friend, to have friends and to have somebody that that will see that and ignite that light that we have. And sometimes we have to borrow that light, and anybody that's struggling can borrow that light that I have. Like that's that hope that I have is there is hope, and just there's something inside you that light that you have, and don't ever think that you don't have it, because I just borrow mine.
Wow. Standing on shoulders of giants, right? Heck
I love that.
You guys are giants. So hopefully I can stand on your shoulders for a little while.
Oh, Todd,
No, you guys are beautiful. Thank you for sharing today. Thank you for being here and being vulnerable. I mean, seriously, people. I mean, unbelievable. Both Weston and Kelly have both been on the podcast before. Weston was a while ago. It was number 174. Kelly was just very recent. It was episode 306. And if you want to hear their full-length stories, go listen to it. We'll put it in the show notes so you can click right to it. But I'm telling you, their stories are phenomenal. And they just shared a little snippet of it. And so I would challenge you guys to do that. And also reach out to them. Kelly on Instagram it's at The Faith Seed.
The Faith Seed.
Yep.
Yes.
And then Weston's, his is, he still has the one he had from junior high. Weston Loves Life 81. I love it though. But if you want to reach out to either one of these two amazing people, reach out to them, ask a question. If you want them to come speak to your group, they will do it in 2 seconds. They will help you out in any way. Like Weston just said, borrow our light if you need it.
Absolutely.
And thanks for being available to do these kind of things.
Thank you. We love it.
We love
Yeah.
you, Todd. We
You're
appreciate
amazing.
you and all the good you're doing. Like it's amazing, and we love you. Seriously.
That means a lot. Thank you. Love you guys too, and love everyone who's on this app and who follows and listens to this amazing Belief Cast with these amazing people. So
Thanks.
love you guys.
Love
Take
you.
care.
Love you too.
Okay.
Thanks, Todd.
Okay.